Same-sex marriage is marriage between two people of the same sex. Legal recognition of same-sex marriage, or the possibility to perform a same-sex marriage, is sometimes referred to as marriage equality or equal marriage, particularly by supporters. The legalization of same-sex marriage is characterized as redefining marriage by many supporters. Opponents. I believe that same-sex marriage should be legalized because two people of the same sex that love one another the same way that two people of the opposite sex love one another should logically be granted the same rights. Same-sex unions have been recorded in the history of a number of cultures, but marriages or socially accepted unions between same-sex partners were rare or non-existent in other cultures. In the late 20th century, religious rights of marriage without legal recognition became increasingly common in certain sects. The first laws regarding recognizing same-sex marriage in modern times were enacted during the first decade of the 21st century. Polls show rising support for legally recognizing same-sex marriage in the Americas, Australia, and most of Europe and East Asia. However, most countries in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe do not legally recognize same-sex marriages. If same-sex marriage were to be legalized, it would be no harm to our society, only a help. Same-sex marriage would allow a certain demographic of our population to have the rights that they deserve and the happiness that they deserve as human beings. The LGBT community, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, has been persecuted for years. Here are three pride flags. The first pride flag is the overall LGBT pride flag. The second pride flag is the bisexual pride flag. And the third pride flag is the transgendered pride flag. LGBT people can face violence motivated by hateful attitudes towards their sexuality or gender identity. Violence may be executed by the state, as in laws prescribing corporal punishment for homosexual acts, or by individuals engaging in intimidation, mobbing, assault, or lynching. Violence targeted at people because of their perceived sexuality can be psychological or physical, and it can extend to murder. These actions may be motivated by homophobia, lesbophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and may be influenced by cultural, religious, or political mores and biases. Currently, homosexual acts are legal in almost all Western countries, and in many of these countries, violence against LGBT people is classified as a hate crime, with such violence often being connected with conservative or religious leading ideologies which condemn homosexuality, or being perpetrated by individuals who associate homosexuality to being weak, ill, feminine, immoral, threatening to their own masculinity or threatening to their own masculinity and femininity. Outside the West, many countries, particularly those where the dominant religion is Islam, but also many countries in the Commonwealth, most African countries, and some Asian countries, and some former communist countries in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, such as Russia and Serbia, are currently very dangerous for LGBT people because of discrimination against homosexuals, which influences both discriminatory legislation and physical violence. LGBT people from around the world still face a ton of discrimination, but the further along we move in the movement toward gay liberation, the happier LGBT people will be in this world. If two people love one another, shouldn't they be allowed the same rights, privileges, and responsibilities no matter what their genders are? Yet marriage is so much more than this commitment of two people to one another. Marriage is an institution that much of our culture revolves around. It is also an institution that is in crisis. Divorce rates are at an all-time high. Infidelity in marriage is an epidemic. When someone can compete on a television reality show to marry a millionaire, the argument about saving a sacred institution seems kind of pointless. Some argue that children are better off raised in a male-female headed household. Whether there is a truth to that argument or not is not the point. Many couples will marry and not have children, gay and straight. Gay and lesbian couples are having children already without the benefit of marriage. So are single moms, teenagers, and drug addicts. Preventing a loving same-sex couple from making a legal commitment to one another can only hurt their children. It can send a negative message to the children of their same-sex parents. How do you explain the legal system to a 5-year-old? Some churches oppose same-sex marriage. Separation of church and state is essential to the freedom we enjoy as Americans. It is also the value our Constitution was based upon. Most of the arguments against gay and lesbian marriage are flawed and reactionary. They are reminiscent of the arguments against interracial marriage 50 years ago, that it will harm children, send the wrong moral message, and devalue the institution of marriage. Most Americans, perhaps with the exception of a few in white robes, will agree that the ban on interracial marriage is nothing more than a prejudice at work. Soon we will all look back at the arguments against same-sex marriages and see, like the ban on interracial marriages, that they are backed by nothing more than bigotry, prejudice, and fear. This is a map of the United States, and it shows which states have legalized gay marriage and which states have not. The blue states are the ones who have legalized gay marriage so far. Looking into the future, after all LGBT people can marry in America and throughout the whole world, the world will be a much happier and truthful place. Gay men and women won't as commonly be married to the wrong sex and therefore have to get a divorce, and many gay men won't be cheating on their wives with other men to release sexual tension. People in places such as Uganda won't be getting the death penalty because of their sexual orientation either. Their world would be a better place if same-sex marriage were to be legalized. The federal government has extended federal benefits to same-sex married couples in states where gay marriage has been legalized, most recently giving benefits to those in 5 states where gay marriage appeals were rejected. The Supreme Court has the ability to legalize same-sex marriage in all of the U.S. and will most likely do so soon. I believe that same-sex marriage should be legalized because two people who are the same sex that love one another the same way that two people of the opposite sex love one another should logically be granted the same rights. In the 1920s there was women's suffrage, in the 1960s there was the civil rights movement, and now there is the gay rights movement. I hope you are on the right side of history.